Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7, and I'm Sam Paton, and once again this evening we're broadcasting from the comfort of my living room. So we'll go on with the show this evening, and first of all and just need to mention the fact that tonight we're just doing a news bulletin. Okay, so now to carry on with the coronavirus update. As of 2 p.m. today, a total of 1,696,896 people in Scotland have been tested through the NHS Scotland labs and the UK Government Regional Testing Centre since the start of the pandemic. Of these, 1,493,341 were confirmed negative. 203,555 had tested positive. There are 543 new confirmed COVID cases. This will be an underestimate of the number of cases. Not everyone with the virus will display symptoms, and not all those with symptoms will be tested. The number of patients in Scotland who have died from complications caused by the coronavirus infection now stands at 7,371. This number only includes those who have died having received a positive test for the virus in the previous 28 days. From March the 3rd, 2021, PHS have adopted an improved method of linking daily confirmed COVID-19 cases with deaths reported through the National Records of Scotland. As a result of this methodologic improvement, an additional 172 confirmed COVID-19 deaths were identified as having occurred within the last 28 days of a first positive COVID test result since the start of the outbreak. These have now been incorporated into the cumulative total. Of the people who have tested positive, 750 were in hospital last night, 69 of whom were in intensive care. As of 8 a.m. today, 1,661,879 people have received their first dose of COVID-19 vaccination. 92,550 have received their second dose. The latest UK daily figures published today show 123,296 patients who tested positive for COVID-19 have sadly died from their illness. An increase of 343 since yesterday, and this number refers to deaths in all settings and not just hospitals. And once again, we would like to send our condolences to all those who have lost a loved one and a friend. Now, the NRS update. As of the 20th of February, 9,580 deaths have been registered in Scotland, where the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, was mentioned on the death certificate according to statistics published by the National Records of Scotland today. In the week, the 22nd to the 28th of February, 227 deaths were registered that mentioned COVID-19 on the death certificate, a decrease of 64 deaths from the previous week. The majority of deaths occurred in hospitals, representing 187 deaths, with 26 deaths in care homes and 14 at home or in non-institutional settings. Around two-thirds of deaths were people aged 75 or over, representing 148 deaths, and there were 32 deaths among those aged under 65. There were 69 more deaths registered in the latest week compared with the average for the period of 2015 to 2019, representing an excess of 6%. Now for our next story. The First Minister appears at committee on the Scottish Government handling of harassment complaints. First Minister Nicola Sturgeon defended her handling of the sexual harassment complaints against her predecessor Alex Salmond in a marathon 8-hour session at the Scottish Parliament Committee on the Scottish Government handling of harassment complaints today. Describing her situation when asked by former First Minister Alex Salmond to intervene as one of the most invidious political and personal situations she had ever faced, Nicola Sturgeon denied Alex Salmond's accusations that she had plotted against him and misled the Parliament. Denying that she had broken the ministerial code, a transgression that would normally lead to a resignation, Miss Sturgeon hit back, rejecting talk of a plot as absurd and linking the affair to the context of the Me Too movement. As First Minister, I refused to follow the age-old pattern of allowing a powerful man to use his status and connections to get what he wants, she said, accusing Salmond of having asked her to intervene in his favour after women complained about him. A separate investigation into whether the First Minister has committed any breach of the ministerial code is now underway. Now for our next story. The budget marks a return to Tory austerity cuts. The SNP has said the UK budget marks a return to the Tory austerity cuts, failing to deliver the investment required to tackle the Tory child poverty crisis and deliver a fair recovery. Responding to the budget, Ian Blackford said Rishi Sunak had failed to deliver the meaningful change and investment needed to build a fairer society and had imposed damaging Tory cuts, including a public sector pay freeze, cliff edge cuts to universal credit and tax rises for millions of workers. The SNP Westminster leader said it was clear Scotland faces a choice of two futures: the long-term damage of Brexit and Tory cuts at Westminster, or the opportunity to secure our place in Europe and a strong, fair and green recovery as an independent country. Commenting, SNP Westminster leader Ian Blackford MP said, the Tories are threatening Scotland's recovery with a return to austerity cuts, an extreme Brexit and a budget that completely failed to deliver the meaningful change and investment needed to build a fairer society. The UK has suffered the worst economic slump of any major economy. UK unemployment is rising and millions of families have seen their incomes slashed. But the Chancellor has added to this misery by imposing public sector pay freeze, cliff edge cuts to universal credit and tax rises for millions of workers. COVID has exposed the deep inequalities that exist under a broken Westminster system, but the Tory budget failed to address them. A decade of Westminster cuts have pushed 4.2 million children into poverty, but there were no measures to reverse the growing Tory child poverty crisis, no plan to raise statutory sick pay or introduce a real living wage. Now for our next story of this evening. The Scottish Finance Secretary responds to the UK budget. Responding to the UK budget, Finance Secretary Kate Forbes said, in advance of the UK budget, I called for the UK government to provide a meaningful and effective long-term support to businesses and households as we face the next phase of the coronavirus pandemic. While I welcome some of the announcements today, it is clear the Chancellor has not matched Scotland's ambition for economic recovery and supporting households. The extension of the furlough scheme and self-employed support will be a relief to many and is something that the Scottish Government has repeatedly called for. However, it is extremely disappointing that the Chancellor has failed to reverse the cuts to Scotland's capital budget and has refused to make the £20 uplift to universal credit permanent. The UK Government's support for businesses and households is significantly less than what we would have committed to here in Scotland. We have provided certainty and stability to businesses by extending 100% non-domestic rate relief for retail, hospitality, leisure and aviation businesses for 12 months. Today, UK budget fell significantly short of this, extending 100% relief for 3 months, but only 66% for the remaining 9 months of the businesses in England. We have taken extra steps to support household finances by compensating councils who choose to freeze council tax. We have also set out our 5-year pipeline of infrastructure investment to inject confidence in our economy, but we are doing that without any additional capital from the UK government. In particular, we have chosen to prioritise substantial investment in affordable homes. We didn't even hear similar levels of ambition from the Chancellor. While there is some additional funding for Scotland, it was clear from the Chancellor's statement that the storm clouds of austerity are on the horizon once again, with the OBR highlighting that the departmental spending is being cut by £15 billion, a move that would be disastrous for our economic recovery, undermine our public services and impact on the most vulnerable in our communities. Over the coming days, I will be meeting with all parties in Parliament as we look towards the final stages of the Scottish budget next week, and I repeat my call to them to come together in a time of crisis to pass a budget that delivers for Scotland. Now for our next story of the evening. The OBR confirms Brexit blow to the UK economy. The Office for Budget Responsibility, the OBR, confirmed Brexit will shrink the UK economy by 4%. The OBR economic forecast published today said Boris Johnson's Brexit deal will result in the long-run loss of productivity of around 4% compared with the remaining in the EU, and that we now expect the temporary near-term disruption to the EU-UK goods trade to reduce by GDP by 0.5% in the first quarter of this year. Separate UK government analysis shows the EU membership is the best deal for Scotland. The Warwick study estimates Scotland has already lost £3.994 billion from Brexit. Scottish government analysis estimates Johnson's deal could cut Scotland's GDP by 6.1%, costing £9 billion, or the equivalent of £1,600 for every person by 2030 compared to the EU membership. Commenting, SNP Westminster Deputy Leader Kirsten Oswald MP said, "Businesses and communities across Scotland have been hit hard by Boris Johnson's extreme Brexit, which has already cost Scotland's economy over £3.94 billion and is projected to cost every person the equivalent of £1,600 in added costs, red tape and barriers to trade." Scotland has been completely ignored throughout the Brexit process, and now we are being forced to pay a devastating price for the Tory incompetence and hardline Brexit dogma. While Ireland has had £1.5 billion from the EU, €1.05 billion euros from the EU's Brexit mitigation fund, Scotland hasn't received a single penny in compensation from the UK government. Now for our next story. German far-right AfD, first party, put under surveillance since Nazi era. Germany's BfV Domestic Intelligence Service has formally placed the far-right Alternative for Germany, AfD, under surveillance on suspicion of trying to undermine Germany's democratic constitution, a person briefed on the move said on Wednesday. After 4 years ago becoming the first avowedly anti-immigrant party to enter the German parliament, the AfD now becomes the first party to be monitored in this way since the Nazi era ended in 1945. It was propelled into the Bundestag in 2017 by voters angry with Chancellor Angela Merkel's decision to welcome more than 1 million migrants, but it has been ostracised by by other parties, which say its rhetoric contributes to an atmosphere of hatred that encourages violence against immigrants. The BFV's move follows a 2-year review and of the AFD's political platform and will allow the agency to eavesdrop on calls and conversation involving AFD members and scrutinise party funding. The Central Council of Jews in Germany welcomed the decision, saying that the AFD's destructive politics undermine our democratic institutions and discredit democracy among citizens. The AFD registered 12.6% support in the 2017 federal election to become the third biggest party in the Bundestag, and also has lawmakers in all 16 regional assemblies, but its support has fallen some 9% in recent surveys, dented by infighting and its opposition to lockdown measures to stem the coronavirus pandemic. Right, and for our next story, defending the Human Rights Act. The Scottish Government will strongly oppose any attempt to weaken the UK Human Rights Act, Equalities and Human Rights Secretary Shirley-Ann Somerville has said. In a detailed evidence submission to the UK Independent Human Rights Review, which was established by the UK Government to review the Human Rights Act, the Scottish Government makes clear that no changes to the Human Rights Act should be made which have the effect of weakening or removing existing safeguards. There must be no changes to the Human Rights Act without consent of the Scottish Parliament. The United Kingdom must remain a full signatory to the European Convention on Human Rights and a member of the Council of Europe. As Somerville said, the Human Rights Act is one of the most important and successful pieces of legislation ever passed by the UK Parliament. It has protected the rights of people throughout the UK for over 2 decades. All of Scotland's public authorities have a legal duty to act compatibly with the rights set out in the Act. Our submission to the review highlights the impact that any changes to the Act could have in eroding human rights. The Act is set at the heart of Scotland's devolved constitutional arrangements. No changes that would impact on Scotland should be made without explicit consent of the Scottish Parliament. Now for our next story, the ICC prosecutor to probe war crimes in Palestine territories. The International Criminal Court prosecutor announced today that her office will formally investigate war crimes in the Palestinian territories, a move welcomed by the Palestinian authorities and denounced by Israel. The decision follows a ruling by the court on February the 5th that it has jurisdiction in the case, prompting swift rejections by Washington and Jerusalem. Sorry, I'm just going to get a glass of water, my mouth's going dry. The decision to open an investigation followed by a painstaking preliminary examination undertaken by my office that lasted close to 5 years, Prosecutor Fatou Bensouda said in a statement. Promising a principled, non-partisan approach, she said, in the end of our central concern must be for the victims of crimes, both Palestinian and Israel, arising from the long cycle of violence and insecurity that has caused deep suffering and despair on all sides. Bensouda, who will be replaced by British prosecutor Carmen Khan on June the 16th, said in December 2019 that war crimes had been or were committed in the West Bank and the Gaza Strip. She named both the Israel Defense Forces and Palestinian groups such as Hamas as possible perpetrators. The next step will be to determine whether Israel and Palestinian authorities have investigations themselves and to assess those efforts. And for our next story of this evening, First Families receive Scottish Child payments. Thousands of families are now receiving their first Scottish Child payment as of Sunday the 28th of February. 52,000 applications have been approved. The new benefit to tackle child poverty, which is unique to Scotland, will give qualifying parents and carers £40 every 4 weeks for each child under 6. 98,000 applications have been received by the end of February. Parents and carers are able to apply for the eligible children in their household in a single application and can also apply for Best Start grants and Best Start foods at the same time. Social Security Secretary Shirley Ann Somerville said, "I am delighted that the first payments of our game-changing Scottish Child payment are now reaching families' bank accounts. We've had a fantastic response to our new payment, and I am really proud that 52,000 applications have been approved already, and I'm also really pleased at the number of applications received. And I would like to ask people for their patience while we process these as quickly as we can." The Scottish Child Payment is the most ambitious anti-poverty measure currently being undertaken anywhere in the UK. This payment will help lift children out of poverty, so we want everyone entitled to this new benefit to receive it. Now for the last story of the evening. Ferry access improvements. Further improvements will be made on Scotland's ferry networks in the 6th round of awards from the Ferries Accessibility Fund. Over £72,000 of funding will go towards a number of projects to improve accessibility on board vessels, as well as at ports and harbours. They include changing places facilities on board the MV Hebrides, upgrade to stair evacuation equipment on Northlink ferries, provision of a passenger shelter and wheelchairs at Mallaig Harbour. The awards are made on a match funding basis. Minister for Energy, Connectivity and the Islands, Paul Wheelhouse, said, "I'm delighted to announce the latest round of awards from the Ferries Accessibility Fund, as we want Scotland's ferry services to offer the best passenger experience possible to everyone." The improvements made through this fund in previous years have been a great success, so it is very encouraging that more excellent proposals have been brought forward in this round. I'm particularly pleased to see changing places facilities being installed on board the MV Hebrides by Calmac, which services the route between Uig on the Isle of Skye to Lochmaddy and Tarbet in the Western Isles. Our ferry operators already have strict standards to meet when it comes to accessibility, but the projects backed by this fund will help them to go further. I look forward to seeing these new facilities being used by passengers. Well, thank you. That's us this evening for our bulletin. Thank you for joining me here at Scotland at 7. And we did have a guest to come on this evening to have a blether, but unfortunately she became ill and wasn't able to appear. And we hope she's feeling better soon. Also, as well, for those who would love to volunteer with Broadcasting Scotland, please contact us. There's the details on your screen, broadcastingscotland.scot. Please get in contact. We are always looking for help. We are also always looking for people to subscribe to Broadcasting Scotland and support us financially as well. For £5 a month, it helps to keep the lights on and keep us going and bringing you the news, which is important to us in Scotland. And again, to do so, here you go, at the bottom of your screen. If you go on and you click there. And also as well, another way of helping us out is to share our broadcasts amongst your friends and family. But once again, thank you so much for joining me this evening, and take care, look after yourselves, and we will see you tomorrow night at 7 o'clock. Thank you.
What distinguishes Broadcasting Scotland from a website or blog, apart from our brilliant programmes?
Hi there, I'm Gordon Ross.
are the costs we face to enable us to produce those programmes. These costs are significant and ongoing. However, our facilities are able to do so much more if only we had the staff. In the last year, some of our supporters have cancelled their subscriptions. In one way, we would prefer it if it was because they didn't like us, rather than it being because of the financial pressures which we are all under because of COVID. The really positive outcome of our fundraiser is that at a time of economic challenge in Scotland, we will use your donations to create jobs and in a small way contribute to improving the Scottish economy. If you want us to be Scotland's independent broadcaster, able to provide an alternative mainstream television platform, then please support us.
Scotland is going to be an independent country.
Just imagine what we could do if we had even 1% of the BBC Scotland channel's budget. Imagine. And then please consider turning your imagination into reality. Please support us if you can afford it.